Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. So let's say you have $1,000. Let's say maybe you got a bonus or you got a gift or you have some savings that you're finally thinking of what to do with it. Well, the normal thing that most people do is they'll go online and Google how to invest $1,000. And I can guarantee you'll see a lot of information that at the end of it, you'll be more confused than ever before, that you might even turn off your mind and not want to invest. But here's the thing, the hard part is not just picking what to invest. The hard part actually is not investing that money. The harder part is the mentality behind the investment. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through how I would invest $1,000, and I'll also talk about the mentality and the fears behind investing so that you would know when all of these things happen and you would know how to respond to it. And so without further ado, let's get into the video. First things first, it will be easy for me to just say, go open an account and just dump that money in there, start buying stocks, and the money will grow. But that would be very irresponsible of me, and that would not be very nice. So let me walk you through the different steps. Before you get to the point of investing, it then means that you're taking care of yourself. What I mean is this: you need to have an emergency fund sitting somewhere such that if anything happens with life, right? Maybe you had an accident, God forbid, or your phone got broken and you need to replace it, or you need to do whatever, you won't go into your investment to sell to cover that emergency. That is what the emergency fund is for. So if you have $1,000 and you don't have an emergency fund yet, what you should do is not consider investing. What you should rather do is to have an emergency fund. But if you have an emergency fund, right now we can go further in this video. Now, one thing I want you to know is there is no perfect time to invest. I know it sounds contradictory because I just said take care of an emergency fund, but that is ground level, establishing a base so that you can build on that. After you've built that base, you can then move into actual investing, right? So that you don't get stuck. You don't get to the point of selling your investment. And so step one, set up an emergency fund first. After you've covered the emergency fund angle, the next place is, where should you put that money in? You need an account. With investing, you can't just use a regular savings account because that is just for cash purposes. So the next step is to open a brokerage account. And you can do this with either Questrade, you can do this with Wealthsimple, you can do this with TD Investing. I'll drop a referral link in the comments below so that you know where to go to get a brokerage account set up, right? So it's not just to open a brokerage account, you also need an account type. So within the brokerage accounts, you can use either a TFSA, RSP, FHSA, or a taxable account. I'll just run through this in brief detail. So TFSA is a tax-free savings account where you get to grow your money tax-free. You have an annual limit of $7,000 a year, but there are more limits to it. RSP, you get 18% of your previous year's income, and you get tax deduction on your investments or on your contributions. FHSA, you get $8,000 a year contribution room up until a maximum limit of $40,000, which you have to use to buy your first qualifying home within 15 years. And then your taxable account or your non-registered account, it's limitless. Now, you can use any of these accounts to invest, but for the purposes of this video, because I want to keep it simple, we'll use TFSA as a starting point, which is what most people actually do. So now that we've established that you need an emergency fund first, we've also established that you need a brokerage account and you need a TFSA, which is a simple starting point. What should you buy? Very good question. If you look at the stock market charts, there are tens of thousands of companies that you can buy with $1,000. Personally, I'm not big on buying stocks because if you're a beginner buying stocks, you need to do the research, study the charts, understand those complications or computations that go on in identifying a good company. I typically would shy away from that, or I would not recommend picking stocks to a beginner. What I would suggest to do, or what I will do, is I will go with a diversified ETF. What an ETF is an exchange traded fund. Think of it, this is my favorite example, think of it as a basket. So you go to the grocery store, you see a basket of products. You put an apple, put an orange, put a banana, put some milk in it, All of these things go into the ETF basket. So instead of buying, and the good thing is you don't choose what goes into the basket, right? For now. So instead of buying all of these products individually, you just go to the grocery store, see a basket that has all of the things that you want, and just buy that basket. That's literally how it works. So the two ETFs that I'll invest this money in, it will either be VFV, which is the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, or XEQT, which is an ETF that covers both Canada, US, and the international market. I really like XEQT, so I will go with XEQT because it gives more diversification around the world. So with $1,000 XEQT, I get instant diversification, and I'm not trying to pick an individual stock to buy or to invest in. So now here's the part that most people don't really get. Here's the part that most people miss out on, and that is automation, which is step 4. Now, what automation simply does is it takes the decision out of your hands and it just standardizes the process. So think about it this way. On, say, the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd, or on a fixed day of the month, a designated amount or a set amount leaves your account, goes to your brokerage account, and it buys the ETF that you set. All you need to do is to make sure that there is money in your bank account, and on that day that money will be transferred to your brokerage account, and your brokerage account already has an instruction to buy XEQT. All you have to do is just relax and let the automation do the rest. This is way better than logging in, doing the transfer, then going ahead to buy. You might forget, you might spend the money, you might talk yourself out of it, but because you are trying to get a habit of building for the long haul. Remember that investing is not a daily thing. Investing is something that happens consistently and it compounds over a long period. Automation is just one step to simplify the process and to make it less painful. So the step number 4, I would automate my investments and I'll rest. All right, so just to do a quick recap, step 1, set up an emergency fund if you don't have one. If you do have one, open a brokerage account, open a TFSA. I'll deposit the $1,000 in there. Go into step 3, I'll invest in a diversified ETF, maybe like XEQT or VFV. Step 4, I would automate the process so that future investments can roll automatically and I keep investing in the market. All right. So now that we've talked about the how, let's talk about what I mentioned earlier, which is the mental psychological part of investing, or the fears that keep people from investing. So fear number 1, most people usually would ask, or most beginner investors would ask, what if I lose it? It's a rational fear. It's normal. Investment is not a guarantee. Investing is not a guarantee. You can put $1,000, which is quite a lot of money, and you might lose half of it. You might lose everything. But rather than thinking of what if I lose it, have a positive mindset of what if this grows to maybe $1,500 or $1,200 or $2,000? What if? You never know. If you don't invest it, I guess you will never find out. Which is why the angle of choosing a diversified ETF comes into play. If you invest in a diversified ETF, it reduces your risk of losses. So for most beginners or for someone who's just starting, I would go with a diversified ETF like VFV or XEQT just to reduce my risk of losing everything. So this is not financial advice. This is what I would do. Another common fear that I see is people are always asking, what if I'm already behind? The truth is, if you see a screenshot of some people's accounts or some people's portfolios where they are saying they're up $40, or they made 100%, or they bought Amazon when Amazon first launched and now it's now like times 200 or 1000%. You don't need to worry about all of those people. They've had their time and your time is now. So there's this quote that really helps me when I'm making investing decisions in the market is, your exit is someone's entry. What that means is, what I deem to be a good entry price might be someone's great exit price. So we have different timelines, we have different investment philosophies. So I don't need to worry about someone else's portfolio. I'm only going to focus on my own, and that's the mindset you should adopt. Don't pay attention to all the screenshots of portfolios you see online. It really doesn't matter. What really matters is what your portfolio is going to do, and your starting point is right now. That's the journey that I care about. So don't compare your starting point to someone else's highlight reel. The next common fear is a lot of people tend to wait for the right time or the best time to invest. I just talked about your entry being someone's exit. Both times are right, right? Someone is leaving the market at the same time you are getting in. Your best time is his own best time. So what are you going to do? You cannot decide, or you cannot sit down and pinpoint when the market is going to go down. If you keep doing that, you're going to get stuck and you won't end up investing. So know at the back of your mind that the market works in cycles. So there'll be ups, there'll be downs. The main thing is, through the ups and downs, you want to be there at every single point in time, so that at the end, when you then plot the charts, you are going up ahead. So the biggest shift for me was realizing that the goal is not to make the best decision. The goal is not to make the optimal investing decision. It's to make a safe and reasonable goal and build the saving habit, which is something that is key, especially if you're starting with $1,000. That will not be the only amount you would invest in this entire lifestyle or in this entire lifetime. You can always adjust later. You can always adjust your timing later, but you cannot get back the time you have spent waiting to invest. What I would advise, or what I would shy away from, is to avoid the trap of waiting for the perfect time, or that feeling of, I'm not ready to invest yet. I'm not ready to invest yet. By the time you're ready, the market is already further down the line, and you'll have some regrets over the time that you've missed. So best time to start was yesterday, the next best time today. There you have it. There's what I would do with $1,000. That's how I would invest $1,000 today. If you wake me up right now, that's how I'm going to do it. So you're not trying to get rich off $1,000. You're just trying to build a habit, because that habit compounds over a long time. So think about it. $1,000 today, $200 tomorrow, $500, $50. As long as your habit is investing and continue to build for your future, you will definitely come out ahead. So don't wait for the best time. Don't get intimidated by another person's portfolio. Focus on your own race, focus on your own wise. Build your emergency fund, like I said. Pick the right account, TFSA, which is usually the best for most beginners. Pick a diversified ETF, automate it, and let the market do the work. If you like this content, like, subscribe, drop a comment below, and let me know what your first investment was, or what your fear was when you started investing, and how you managed to overcome that fear. Tell somebody about my channel, subscribe like I said, and I'll see you on the next one.